Hello, everyone. My name is Ishraq Khan, and I am currently a freshman in the Macaulay Honors Program at the City College of New York. One of my most favorite hobbies is to travel around New York and learn about its diverse neighborhoods and their rich history. However, New York is a place that rapidly undergoes profound changes, and for this podcast, I wanted to take a closer look at one particular neighborhood that many people may not know too much about, Red Hook. It's a peninsula located at the southern edge of downtown Brooklyn, bounded by the Gowanus Expressway, the Gowanus Canal, Upper New York Bay, and the Buttermilk Channel. That's why over this past spring break, I decided to take a few friends and take a trip down there. Like many other neighborhoods in New York, Red Hook has slowly began to gentrify, especially after the devastation wrought upon by Hurricane Sandy. My goal for this journey was to learn more about Red Hook's history, how Hurricane Sandy affected the neighborhood, and how gentrification and other efforts helped Red Hook rebound to the condition that it is in now. Before I actually made the trip to Red Hook, I thought it was important to learn about the history of the neighborhood to understand why it may be the way it is today. Red Hook gets its name from when the original settlement was colonized by the Dutch in 1636. The village was called Rudhoeken. Rud refers to the reddish-colored soil that settlers found there, and Hoeken, which means point in Dutch, refers to how it is a part of Brooklyn that sticks out into Upper New York Bay. Between the 1840s and 1920s, Red Hook was transformed into one of the busiest freight ports not only in the United States, but also in the world. However, since the emergence of containerization in the 1960s, Red Hook's reputation as the busiest freight port has ended. Since then, it has had a shaky reputation. The Red Hook houses were the site of a Hooverville, and it was named one of the worst neighborhoods and crack capital in the United States by Life magazine in the 1990s. It was also heavily damaged when Hurricane Sandy struck in 2012. Today, the area's industrial and freight port history has left a legacy of brick and concrete architecture, massive container cranes, big parking lots, and little greenery. Equipped with all the knowledge about Red Hook's history, I felt confident to finally travel and experience the neighborhood for myself. The first place that we visited after arriving at Red Hook was Rocky Sullivan's, a popular Irish bar located on Beard Street. It was behind this bar that we met Marcus, who has been working in Red Hook for a couple of years now but does not currently live there. I asked him if he was able to offer a bit of his time and answer a few questions to help us as we explored Red Hook. The first thing I asked him was if he could tell me a little bit more about Rocky Sullivan's.
Yeah, it's Rocky Sullivan. It used to be at a different location here in Red Hook, up in Van Dyke Street. Unfortunately, we were forcibly removed from there by the last owner after almost a decade, but I'm not really allowed to talk more about that. So we have that homey vibe that we used to. Maybe one day when you guys are older, you can come down and have a drink.
One thing I noticed was at the back there were a lot of Irish murals, so I could tell that this was a place filled with a lot of history. I also asked him if he could explain some of the things that he liked to do, and some of the popular places to visit while in Red Hook.
Even though I don't really live around here, after a long day of working, I like to eat at some of the restaurants on Van Brunt Street. My favorite is definitely Hometown Barbecue, but you can definitely find some other places you like. Lobster Pound is also really popular. Aside from that, I also like to run around the track around Red Hook Park. But yeah, definitely check out Van Brunt Street. That's where most of the fun stuff is.
Along Van Brunt Street, I saw a small store with handmade crafts and fabrics inside. There, I found Jane. Even though she didn't feel comfortable being recorded, she was happy to answer all of the questions I asked. First, I asked her about her history with Red Hook. She said that she had been working at her shop for the past 10 years, but only moved from Park Slope 5 years ago because the commute was too difficult. I also wanted to know more about Hurricane Sandy and how badly it damaged the neighborhood. Jane said that it shone a light on the neighborhood. Those who left never looked back, but those who stayed came out to help and became regular customers. Lastly, I asked about the effect gentrification had on Red Hook, at least from her perspective as someone who has been there for the past 10 years. She told me that one of the biggest changes has been that rents have tripled in that time. In fact, many people are moving out of Red Hook into the Bronx because of the increasing rents. Jane felt that the change is bittersweet. On one hand, you have all this new attention on Red Hook with these new shops, but it has definitely come at a cost. She also mentioned that there is a 5-story limit on the buildings because Red Hook is a flood zone. This limit puts a damper on gentrification because companies can't start to build large skyscrapers and condominiums, but she predicted that they may try and get it redacted. Jane's last few comments were about how she and many other residents hoped that Red Hook wouldn't transform into another Williamsburg. She was afraid that certain parts of the city would suddenly become forgotten and lag behind. All in all, she was very nice and helped me to understand more about the sense of community in the neighborhood. My friends and I actually noticed what Jane was talking about when she said some parts of the neighborhood seem to lag behind others. We saw this with the Beard Street warehouses. This structure was built by Jeremiah P. Robinson and William Beard in the 1860s and was split into a commercial and industrial space. At first sight, we thought it was just an abandoned prison of some sort. Many of the warehouses on Beard Street are abandoned at this moment. However, some of the structures now have businesses that reside within them. The warehouses remind us of a time when Red Hook granted the strongest shipping facilities and storage terminals. Its historic characteristics still remain today, such as the brick walls and iron shutters. It's been said that coffee and cocoa beans can still be found in the cracks today. However, the forgotten parts of the city did not stop there. My friends and I came across the Red Hook trolley cars that we found behind the Fairway Market, near the Red Hook waterfront. They almost seemed out of the ordinary. When we arrived up close to the trolley, it was completely abandoned and rusting. I learned that the trolley cars were a part of Bob Diamond, who's an engineer and rail buff from Brooklyn's great plan to create a rail line between downtown Brooklyn and Red Hook in order to make transportation more comfortable. With help from the city, Diamond was able to build a track and collect trolleys from 1897. However, the city didn't have faith in his plans and cut his funding, ultimately crushing his dreams. After a decade of 3 trolley cars just sitting by the warehouse, Hurricane Sandy hit and further damaged this neighborhood icon. With both gentrification and Hurricane Sandy, the history behind these trolley cars has been forgotten. However, not all parts of the city have been forgotten. Red Hook actually gave off a very lively vibe. Maybe it was just that I decided to visit on a day where the sun was shining and the weather was nice. However, many different things added on to this energetic aura of the city. There are many different sounds that one experiences as they walk through Red Hook, including those from metalworking, furniture design, and glass blowing. Not to mention how many different artisanal producers of wine, spirits, and chocolates have been multiplying. Some different enterprises include the Red Hook Winery, Uncouth Vermouth, Van Brunt Stillhouse, and Rocca Co. Virgin Chocolate, all offering tastings, tours, or both. One thing that my friends and I missed out on was a combined tour of the shared facility between the distillery Widow Jane and the chocolate factor Cacao Prieto. Not to mention there is a great appreciation for the arts. Emerging artists can find a home at Pioneer Works and Art Center and the Brooklyn Waterfront Artists Coalition. And like Marcus mentioned before, the local food also attracts visitors from beyond Red Hook. Some of the best places include Hometown Barbecue, Red Hook Lobster Pound, and Steve's Authentic Key Lime Pies. Of course, since my friends and I love seafood the most, we decided to take a trip down to the Lobster Pound, which was located on Van Brunt Street. The name of the restaurant refers to a cove or tank where lobsters are held until they are sold off. We ordered the famous lobster roll and cheese fries, even though they messed up our order and gave us lobster cheese fries instead. According to our waitress, the lobsters come freshly caught straight from Maine. We also learned that after Hurricane Sandy, Red Hook Lobster Pound had to close for 4 months due to renovations. Needless to say, we left very satisfied. Although it was more on the expensive side when it comes to food, it was nice to try out an iconic Red Hook dish. Other places that people would recommend were Hometown Barbecue, and although we didn't get to eat there, we took a picture outside of the restaurant next to their cow sign. A few more places that we didn't get to visit included Baked, Fort Defiance, and the Brooklyn Ice House. All in all, I would recommend to anyone listening to take the ferry ride over to Red Hook, Brooklyn. Take a few hours to wander through the massive IKEA with your friends, or sit by the water at Erie Basin Park. And if you start to feel hungry, try eating at some of the trendy restaurants including the Lobster Pound or Hometown Barbecue. Gentrification has brought much of the life back to this quaint neighborhood. Aside from some of the more rundown parts of the community, including the Beard Street warehouses and trolley cars, much of the damage following the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy is unnoticeable. Even though many of the longtime residents have begun to notice some of the changes that have been occurring, they agree that this has just made Red Hook more noticeable on the map for something other than IKEA. And if any of you do decide to visit, make sure to drop by Jane's little shop and tell her Ishrak said hi. Thanks for listening, and I hope you all learned something new about our great city and its amazing people.